Story 1. Story 1, The Inheritance. The house was a gift, an inheritance from a great-aunt I barely knew. It sat hunched on a quiet street in a town forgotten by time, its peeling paint the color of a bruise. The realtor handed me the keys with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Charming, he'd called it. I thought it looked like something out of a Gothic novel. Inside, dust lay thick as a shroud, sunlight struggling to penetrate the grime-coated windows. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something indefinably unpleasant, like decay. My fiancé, Mark, squeezed my hand. "It'll be beautiful once we fix it up," he said, his voice echoing in the unnatural stillness. We started in the living room, hauling furniture out onto the overgrown lawn. By late afternoon, exhaustion had settled in our bones. "There's a basement," Mark said, pointing to a door tucked beneath the stairs. "Let's see what's down there." The door groaned like a wounded animal as he pulled it open, releasing a gust of frigid air that smelled powerfully of mildew and rust. A rickety wooden staircase descended into darkness. I shivered, a sudden, inexplicable dread tightening in my chest. "Do we have to?" I asked, my voice small. Mark chuckled. "Don't be silly. We need to know what we're working with." He flicked a switch by the door, but nothing happened. "Bulb's gone. Stay here, I'll be right back." He disappeared into the gloom, leaving me standing in the eerie silence of the hallway. The house felt different now, colder, somehow. I listened for Mark's footsteps, but all I could hear was the creaking of the house settling and the frantic hammering of my own heart. Minutes ticked by, each one stretching into an eternity. "Mark?" I called down, my voice trembling. No answer. I took a hesitant step onto the stairs, the wood groaning under my weight. "Mark!" I shouted again, my voice laced with panic. Still nothing. I fumbled for my phone, the weak beam of its flashlight barely penetrating the oppressive darkness below. "Mark, this isn't funny." My voice cracked. I descended into the basement, the cold, damp air clinging to my skin like a second layer. The air in the basement was thick with the smell of damp earth and something metallic. My phone's light flickered across rough stone walls, cobweb-draped shelves, and forgotten relics of past lives. There was a low hum emanating from somewhere deeper in the basement, a sound that vibrated through the floor and up into my bones. "Mark!" My voice was barely a whisper now. I felt a prickle on the back of my neck, the unsettling sensation of being watched. I shone my light into the furthest corners of the basement, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I saw it. A small, wooden door set into the far wall, a door I hadn't noticed before. It was slightly ajar, a sliver of deeper darkness beckoning me forward. The hum seemed to be coming from behind it. Hesitantly, I approached, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. As I touched the cold metal, I heard a sound behind me. A soft shuffle, like someone shifting their weight. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. The beam of my phone danced across the empty space, revealing nothing but shadows. "Mark?" I whispered, my voice choked with fear. Silence. Only the low hum from behind the door. I turned back to the door, my hand still on the handle. I had to know what was behind it. What if Mark was in there? What if he needed help? I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The space beyond was smaller than I'd expected, a tiny, dirt-floored cellar. The air was thick with the metallic scent I'd noticed earlier, stronger now, almost overpowering. My phone light revealed shelves lined with dusty jars, their contents obscured by grime. And in the center of the room, a small, wooden table. On the table lay a single object. A leather-bound book, its pages yellowed and brittle. I reached out, my fingers brushing the worn leather. As I touched the book, the humming stopped. The silence that followed was absolute, suffocating. And then, a whisper, so close to my ear I felt it brush my skin. "He's not coming back." I screamed, dropping the book and scrambling back, my phone clattering to the dirt floor. I fumbled for it, my hand shaking uncontrollably. When I finally managed to switch the light back on, the cellar was empty. The book was gone. I fled, stumbling back up the stairs and into the hallway, the echoing whisper still ringing in my ears. I burst out of the house and into the fading light, gasping for air. Mark was nowhere to be seen. His car was gone. He was just gone. The police searched, but they found nothing. They treated me with thinly veiled skepticism, their questions hinting at a breakdown, a delusion. But I knew what I heard. I knew what I felt. I never went back to the house. I couldn't. The thought of that basement, that cellar, that whisper, filled me with a bone-chilling dread that I couldn't shake. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls around my apartment building, I hear it again. That low hum, vibrating through the walls, through my bones. And then, the whisper, soft as a breath against my ear. He's not coming back. And I wonder, what was in that book? And what, or who, took Mark? And is it coming for me next? Story 2. Story 2, The Borrowed Years. The basement wasn't ours. It belonged to the old Victorian we were renting while our house underwent renovations. Character, the realtor had called the sagging floorboards and peeling wallpaper. History. I'd called it creepy. But the rent was cheap, and the inconvenience temporary, so we moved in. The first few weeks were uneventful. The basement, accessed through a rickety door under the kitchen stairs, served as storage. We crammed it with boxes filled with our displaced lives, books, clothes, photo albums, the detritus of a decade together, Maya and I. It started subtly. A musty smell, stronger than old wood and damp earth. A chill that lingered even on warm days. I dismissed it. Old houses, I reasoned. They have their quirks. Then, the dreams began. Not nightmares, exactly. More like echoes. Blurry images of people I'd never met, dressed in clothes from another era. They moved silently, faces obscured by shadow, their presence radiating a profound sadness. I mentioned it to Maya one morning over coffee. Stress, she said, squeezing my hand. Renovations are a nightmare. But I knew it was something else. The basement felt charged. Like a battery storing not electricity, but something else, something older. One evening, I went down to retrieve some winter clothes. The bare bulb cast long, distorted shadows. The air hung heavy, thick with that peculiar, sweet sickly scent. I felt a prickle on the back of my neck, the unsettling sensation of being watched. Hello? My voice echoed unnervingly. Silence. I grabbed a box, my heart pounding against my ribs. As I turned to leave, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small, wooden rocking chair tucked away in a far corner, half hidden by a stack of dusty furniture. It was a child's chair, worn smooth with age. And it was rocking. Slowly, rhythmically, as if occupied by an invisible presence. I froze, every instinct screaming at me to run. I stared, transfixed by the gentle sway, the creaking would a counterpoint to the frantic thumping of my own blood in my ears. Then, as abruptly as it had started, it stopped. I fled. I didn't tell Maya about the rocking chair. I couldn't. The words wouldn't form. Instead, I started avoiding the basement. I even slept with the bedroom light on, a childish comfort against the growing unease that gnawed at me. The dreams intensified. The faces became clearer, their expressions etched with a desolate longing. I recognized them now, from old photographs I'd found in a box labeled Family History, a box I'd retrieved from the basement. They were the previous owners, a family who had lived in the house for generations. One afternoon, Maya came home early. She found me pacing restlessly in the living room, my face pale, my hands trembling. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "The basement," I whispered, finally breaking the silence. "Something's wrong with the basement." She listened patiently as I recounted the strange occurrences, the oppressive atmosphere, the rocking chair. She remained skeptical, attributing it to stress and overwork. but there was a flicker of unease in her eyes, a reflection of my own growing terror. That night, I awoke to a sound. A soft, rhythmic creaking coming from downstairs. The sound of a rocking chair. I lay frozen, my heart hammering in my chest. Maya slept soundly beside me, oblivious to the creeping dread that filled the room. I had to go down there. I had to see. I crept out of bed, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. I descended the stairs, the air growing colder with each step. The basement door loomed before me, a dark, gaping maw. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the cold metal knob. The creaking continued, a steady, hypnotic rhythm. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The basement was bathed in an ethereal, silver light. It emanated from the rocking chair, which swayed gently in the corner. The air was thick with the familiar sweet sickly scent, now overpowering, almost suffocating. As I approached the chair, I noticed something lying on the seat. A small, leather-bound book. I reached for it, my fingers trembling. As my hand brushed the cover, the rocking stopped. The silver light vanished, plunging the basement back into darkness. Only the bare bulb flickered weakly, casting long, menacing shadows. I fumbled for the light switch, my heart pounding in my ears. The light flickered to life, revealing the empty rocking chair. The book was gone. I stood there for a long time, the silence broken only by the frantic rhythm of my own breathing. Then, I slowly backed away, my eyes fixed on the empty chair. I never went back down to the basement. We moved out as soon as the renovations were complete, leaving behind boxes of belongings we never unpacked. Years have passed, but the memory of that basement, the rocking chair, the vanished book, still haunts me. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I hear the faint creaking of wood, the echo of borrowed years whispering in the darkness. And I wonder what happened to the family who lived there before us, the faces I saw in my dreams. I wonder what secrets that basement held, what truths I unwittingly unearthed. And I wonder, what happened to the book? Story 3. Story 3, The Sound of Absence. It was a Tuesday. The kind of grey, drizzling Tuesday that bleeds the colour out of everything. I was home alone, supposed to be working on my next anthology, but the words felt hollow, mocking. The silence of the house was pressing in on me, a thick, suffocating blanket. I needed a break, a distraction. My gaze drifted towards the basement door tucked beneath the staircase. I hadn't been down there in months. Boxes of my grandmother's things, forgotten memories gathering dust. The thought pricked at me with a strange mix of guilt and unease. I told myself it was procrastination, a need to avoid the looming deadline. But something else tugged me towards that closed door, a dark curiosity I couldn't name. The air grew colder as I descended the creaking wooden steps. The musty smell of damp earth and old paper hung heavy. A single bare bulb cast a sickly yellow light, barely piercing the gloom. Dust motes danced in the weak illumination, mimicking the unease that flitted through me. I started sifting through the boxes, finding faded photographs of faces I barely recognized, chipped porcelain dolls with glassy, staring eyes, yellowed letters tied with ribbon. Each object felt weighted with an unspoken history, a silent echo of lives lived and gone. I felt a pang of something, loss? Nostalgia? It was hard to pinpoint. Then I heard it. A faint scratching, like nails on wood, coming from the far corner of the basement. My heart quickened. The hairs on my arms prickled. I strained to hear over the thumping in my ears, holding my breath. Silence. I told myself it was the house settling, the wind outside. Old houses made noises. But the silence that followed was different. It wasn't the comforting quiet of an empty space. It was an absence, a void. It felt like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting. I resumed my rummaging, trying to ignore the creeping dread that crawled up my spine. I found a small, wooden box tucked beneath a stack of old newspapers. Its lid was slightly ajar. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against something smooth and cold. Metal. As I lifted the box, the scratching sound returned, louder this time, closer. I froze, the box clutched in my hand. My heart pounded against my ribs. I slowly turned my head towards the sound, peering into the shadows that clung to the far wall. Nothing. Just boxes, shadows, dust. I placed the wooden box on the floor and cautiously approached the corner. The scratching stopped. The silence returned, that heavy, expectant silence. I ran my hand along the rough stone wall, searching for a loose pipe, a rat, anything to explain the noise. Nothing. Suddenly, I felt a cold draft on the back of my neck. I whirled around, convinced something was behind me. But there was nothing there. The basement was empty. Except for me. And the silence. And the growing certainty that I was not alone. I snatched up the wooden box and practically ran back up the stairs, my heart hammering in my chest. I slammed the basement door shut, the sound echoing through the suddenly too quiet house. I leaned against the door, gasping for breath, the wooden box clutched tightly in my hands. I didn't open the box. I couldn't. I placed it on the kitchen table, avoiding looking at it. The silence of the house pressed in on me again, but now it was different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was full. Full of something unseen, something unheard, something waiting. The scratching started again, but this time it wasn't coming from the basement. It was coming from inside the box. A slow, deliberate scratching. Like something trying to get out. I haven't opened it. I don't know what to do. The scratching continues, a constant reminder of the unseen presence in my home. I try to ignore it, to pretend I don't hear it, but it's always there, a low, persistent gnawing at the edges of my sanity. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I think I hear another sound, a faint whisper beneath the scratching. I strain to hear, holding my breath, listening. But the silence just gets heavier. And the waiting continues.